In the summer of 1974, the biggest seed company in northeast Iowa made a bet it was certain it couldn't lose. It lost. The company was Heartland Seed Corporation, based in Cedar Falls. By '74, their flagship hybrid HS880 was planted on an estimated 90% of the corn acres in Bremer County. It was a good hybrid, high-yielding, uniform, disease-resistant, bred for the specific soil and climate of northeast Iowa. The company had invested $300,000 developing it, tested it over 7 years, and promoted it with the confidence that comes from knowing your product is the best thing available. The man who ran Heartland's sales operation in Bremer County was Phil Driscoll, 43, an Iowa State agronomy graduate, a salesman who believed in his product the way a preacher believes in his text. Phil sold HS880 with data, yield trials, test plots, side-by-side comparisons, charts showing Heartland's hybrid outperforming everything else by 8 to 12 bushels per acre. The data was real. In a normal year, on normal ground, with normal rainfall, HS880 was an excellent corn, but Phil had a problem. One farmer in Bremer County wouldn't buy it. Orville Stumpf was 71 years old and had farmed 200 acres east of Waverly since 1931, 43 years. He'd taken over from his father, who'd taken over from his father, Wilhelm Stumpf, who'd immigrated from Bavaria in 1889 with a steamer trunk, a wife, and a cloth bag of open-pollinated corn seed. His family had been growing in the Danube Valley for as long as anyone could remember. That corn, the Stumpf corn, was not a hybrid. It was a living population of plants that had been reproducing naturally, generation after generation, for at least 100 years in Bavaria and another 85 in Iowa. Every fall, Orville selected the best ears from the healthiest plants, dried the kernels, and stored them in cloth bags in his corn crib for spring planting. The seed was free. It cost him nothing. He grew his own seed from his own crop on his own land, the way corn had been grown since humans first domesticated it 10,000 years ago. Every October, Orville walked his field and selected seed corn by hand, not from the bin, but from standing stalks. He looked for specific plants: tallest stalk, thickest ear at the right height, good root brace, no disease, no insect damage. He'd peel back the husk, examine the kernels, tight rows, uniform fill, deep color, no gaps. He selected about 200 ears from 200 different plants every fall. This was critical. Selection from 200 different plants spread across the entire field maintained the genetic diversity of the population while slowly pushing it toward better performance. Orville dried the ears on racks in his corn crib for 6 weeks, then shelled them by hand, keeping only the middle kernels from each ear. The selected seed went into cloth bags, each labeled with the year, the field location, and notes on the growing season. He'd kept those notes since 1931, 43 years of planting records written in pencil on cloth tags. This was not primitive farming. This was plant breeding, slow, patient, continuous plant breeding, conducted by one man in one field for 43 years. Every year's selection made the next year's corn slightly better adapted to the specific soil, climate, and disease pressure of that particular piece of Iowa ground. The corn knew this ground, and the ground knew this corn. Phil Driscoll had been trying to sell Orville Heartland seed since '68. 6 years of annual visits, 6 years of data presentations, 6 years of being told no. Orville, your corn is 50 years behind the science. HS880 will give you 12 bushels more per acre. On 200 acres, that's $6,000 a year you're leaving in the field. My corn does fine. My grandfather's genetics have been growing on this ground for 85 years. Your hybrid has been growing for 7. Come back when you've got 85 years of data. Phil couldn't argue the math on that one. But it frustrated him, not just because Orville was a lost sale, but because Orville was visible. His farm sat on Highway 218, the main road between Waverly and Cedar Falls. Every farmer in the county drove past Orville's fields twice a week, watching his open-pollinated corn stand beside the neighbor's hybrid like a museum exhibit next to a modern gallery. In February of '74, at the Bremer County Fair Board's annual planning meeting, Phil made a proposal that would become the most talked about event in county fair history. I want to sponsor a public yield contest. Heartland Seed versus any farmer in the county who thinks his corn can beat ours. Side-by-side test plots at the fairground. Same soil, same planting date, same fertility program, measured and weighed at harvest by the county extension agent. Winner takes $25,000. $25,000 was a staggering sum, more than most farmers in the county netted in a year. Heartland put up the money. If any farmer's corn outproduced HS 880, they paid him $25,000 cash. If the hybrid won, which Phil was certain it would, the farmer paid nothing. Everyone on the board knew who Phil had in mind. Everyone in the county did, too. Phil expected a dozen entries. He got one. Orville Stumpf walked into the fair board office on March 15 and signed the entry form. He listed his seed variety as Stumpf open-pollinated dent, family strain, continuous cultivation since approximately 1889. The fair board secretary looked up from the form. "Mr. Stumpf, you're entering open-pollinated corn against Heartland's hybrid." "I know what it does when everything goes right," Orville said. "I want to know what it does when something goes wrong." Both plots were planted on May 4 by the same planter, same depth and spacing. Both received the same fertilizer, 120 pounds of nitrogen per acre, applied by the extension agent, to eliminate every variable except the seed itself. By mid-June, the difference was visible. The Heartland hybrid was taller, more uniform, darker green. The rows were straight, the plants identical in height and leaf architecture. It looked like a photograph from a seed catalog. Orville's corn was shorter. The plants varied in height by 4 to 6 inches. The row spacing was slightly irregular, because open-pollinated seed varies in kernel size. The leaves were a lighter shade of green. "It's already over," Phil told his sales team. "Stumpf's corn looks like it was planted by a blind man. August is going to be embarrassing for the old man." But Orville wasn't worried about June. He was watching the sky. July was dry. Rainfall ran 40% below normal. The subsoil dried out steadily. And this is where the story turns, because the drought exposed something no yield trial had ever captured. The hybrid corn responded the way hybrid corn responds to moisture stress, uniformly. Every plant in the Heartland plot showed the same symptoms at the same time: leaf curling, tassel delay, silk emergence failure. When a hybrid population is genetically identical, stress hits every plant simultaneously. There's no variation to buffer the impact. Orville's corn responded differently. It was genetically diverse, every plant slightly different from its neighbor. Some plants curled their leaves early and shut down. Others kept growing. Some tasseled on time, others delayed. The population didn't fail uniformly. It sorted itself. The strongest individuals kept producing while the weakest sacrificed themselves. Geneticists call this population buffering, the ability of a diverse population to absorb stress by losing its weakest members while protecting its strongest. A hybrid can't do this. An open-pollinated population can. The drought continued through August, through pollination, the critical window when corn transfers pollen from tassel to silk. In the Heartland plot, the uniform tassel delay meant that pollen dropped before many silks had emerged. Poor pollination, incomplete ear fill, kernels that should have been plump were absent or shriveled. In Orville's plot, the staggered timing created a longer pollination window. More silks caught pollen. More kernels formed. The ears weren't uniform, but the average fill was higher than the hybrids. Orville walked the plots every week, feeling the ears, counting the kernel rows. He knew by August 1 that his corn had pollinated better. He didn't tell anyone. He just waited for the fair. 500 people showed up to watch a seed company lose $25,000. Farmers from Chickasaw, Butler, Fayette, and Black Hawk counties drove to Waverly. The grandstand was full by 9 a.m. Phil Driscoll stood by the Heartland booth, wearing his company polo and an expression of confidence that had been eroding since late July. Orville stood across the grandstand in overalls and boots, holding his cloth seed bag against his chest with both hands, the bag faded and soft from decades of use. The county extension agent, Dale Kurtz, harvested both plots with a combine and weigh wagon, tested for moisture content, and adjusted to standard. He walked to the grandstand stage. 500 people went quiet. Plot A, Heartland Seed HS 880 Hybrid, 91 bushels per acre. In a drought year, that was respectable. Not great, HS 880 averaged 118 in normal conditions, but respectable. Phil exhaled slightly. Plot B, Stumpf open-pollinated Dent, 103 bushels per acre. The grandstand erupted. 500 farmers on their feet, not polite applause but a roar, the kind that comes from watching something you didn't think was possible. An open-pollinated corn variety that a man's grandfather had carried from Bavaria in a cloth bag had outproduced a $300,000 hybrid breeding program by 12 bushels per acre. In a drought, in front of 500 witnesses, Phil stood by his booth and didn't move. Orville didn't celebrate. He nodded slowly, the way a man nods when something he already knew has finally been confirmed for everyone else. Heartland honored the bet. Phil Driscoll personally delivered the check to Orville's farm the following Monday, quiet, alone, no ceremony. In a normal year, your hybrid probably wins. You know that, Orville said. Then why did you enter? Because you designed the contest for a normal year. Farming isn't about when everything works. It's about when something goes wrong. Your corn fails uniformly, every plant, same stress, same time, same result. My corn fails individually. Some plants die, some survive. The population adjusts. Your corn is bred for the best year. Mine is bred for the worst. And the worst year is the year that matters. Phil stood in Orville's kitchen a long time after that. His agronomy degree had taught him hybrid vigor, yield optimization, disease resistance. It hadn't taught him that genetic uniformity, the very foundation of hybrid corn, was also its deepest vulnerability. A population where every individual is identical has no resilience. A population where every individual is different can absorb almost anything. What are you going to do with the money? Phil asked. Build a seed bank. Orville used the $25,000 to construct a climate-controlled seed storage building on his farm, insulated, temperature-regulated, with wooden racks holding hundreds of cloth bags. Not just Stumpf corn, but dozens of open-pollinated varieties he'd collected from other farmers, from seed exchanges, from agricultural experiment stations, dent corn, flint corn, flour corn, popcorn. Each bag a living library of genetic diversity that no hybrid could replicate. Diversity is insurance, he told the extension agent who visited. Every variety in this building is a policy against a disaster that hasn't happened yet. You can't buy this insurance from a company. You can only grow it yourself. Orville farmed until 1983. He died in 1991 at 88. At his funeral, his son Martin held the old cloth seed bag from the fair and said one thing the room didn't forget: my father saved seed for 43 years. Every fall, 200 ears. Every spring, 40 pounds in a cloth bag. He did it because his father did it, and his father's father did it, and the corn expected it. My father gave the corn what it expected, and the corn gave him 103 bushels in a drought year when the best hybrid in the county gave 91. This bag is 102 years old. The seed in it is older than any company, any laboratory, any hybrid program in America. It's alive because someone chose it every fall for 100 years. That's not farming. That's a relationship. And you can't buy a relationship from a seed catalog. Martin donated the seed collection to Iowa State University in 1993. The Stumpf corn, the variety Wilhelm carried from Bavaria in 1889, is still maintained there. University geneticists have found it carries traits modern hybrids lack: deep root architecture, drought tolerance mechanisms, and a pollination window roughly twice as long as standard hybrids. These traits have been used in at least 3 breeding programs developing drought-resistant corn for the Great Plains. Phil Driscoll left Heartland in '78, not because of the contest, but because the company wanted farmers planting HS 880 on 100% of their acres, and Phil had learned, standing in Orville's kitchen, that 100% of anything is a risk, not a strategy. He became an independent crop consultant. His first recommendation to every client was always the same: plant hybrid on 80% of your acres. Plant something different on the other 20. It might cost you 12 bushels in a good year. It'll save your operation in a bad one. He never told his clients where that advice came from. The 500 people who were at the Bremer County Fair in '74 already knew, the hybrid was bred for the best year. The old corn was bred for the worst. And the worst year is the one that matters.